You ready for this deal, Jimbo?
Hey, you know I'm always ready, Cody.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Cowboys of the Osage podcast, brought to you by the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum, located in historic downtown Pahuska, Oklahoma. Hey, it's old Cody over here. And as always, I got my old partner with me, Mr. Rodeo historian himself, Mr. Jimbo Snively. Hey, Jimbo. Good morning. Good to see you. Who do we have today?
Hey, Cody boy, it's just another great day in Osage, man. And Cody, we got one of the great bulldoggers of the 1960s, Mr. Don Huddleston. Um, Don was 8 times NFR qualifier. He bulldogged at Dallas, Los Angeles, and Oklahoma City at the finals. And get this, Cody, he set NFR arena records at all three of those places.
And that's when this bulldogging was actually bulldogging. I mean,
Yeah, and they had horns too.
head with a major animal.
Right, right.
I saw some old video of some of these guys. Some of these steers would literally lift their head up and pick their
Right.
feet up off the ground and just walk away with them.
Right, right.
He's back there when men were men,
Yeah.
type of deal.
Yeah, back when they bucked, as they said.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so we're just real proud to have Don with us today. And Don, welcome to the Cowboys of the Osage podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for calling.
It's our pleasure. Don, where'd you grow up at?
Well, I grew up about 25 miles from here at Sardis, Oklahoma. And I lived there until I got married and bought this place here we live on.
That place you live on, where is that? Where is that at, Don?
That's
exactly?
5 miles west of Talihina on 63.
That's important information to know because they got a big steer wrestling jackpot they've had for I don't even know how many years. How many years have you been having your steer wrestling jackpot there?
Well, we'll have it the 50th year this year.
Oh,
wow.
It's a big one.
Well,
that's got to be one of the oldest continuously held bulldogging jackpots in the country, I would have to think.
Yeah, that's the oldest for Oklahoma. Well, and I don't know of any more that they've had it that long.
Yeah, I bet.
Anymore.
I'd always run into we used to live there in McAllister, Jimbo, and I'd always run into Jimmy Powers on his way home from that jackpot for some reason every single year in McAllister from the Huddleston jackpot. It was just a strange coincidence.
Right.
Like 4 years in a row, we'd run into each other, whether it was at the gas station or an eating place or wherever it was. We'd both be at the same place on his way home from the Huddleston jackpot up there.
Right. Well, Don, how'd you get interested in rodeo or steer wrestling in particular?
Well, I got interested in rodeoing out chopping cotton. My dad was a farmer. He never had even seen a rodeo at that time. And I went to see one at Bowie, Texas. And I talked to some of the bulldoggers down there, like James Bynum and Todd Watley and some of those guys. And they kind of interested me in bulldogging. But I didn't bulldog for several years in. That was when I was about 8 or 9, 10 years old. And when I got about 14 or 15, I decided that I'd start bulldogging. I was trying to ride bulls then and was doing a pretty good job. First RCA rodeo I went to was in Lone Grove, Texas. And I won the bull riding there. So I went from there to bulldogging by accident. Keith Freeman supposed to enter me at the Queen, Arkansas, and he entered me in the bull riding and the bulldogging. So I done them both. But
Wow.
What finally cured you of the bull riding?
well, I just I bull ride off and on for 3 or 4 years, but I got to weigh in 200, and that was when I'd get off or didn't get off on my feet, my body would hurt when it hit the ground. So I decided I'd just bulldog.
I think that was a wise decision. You know, Todd Watley was a big guy, and he bulldogged and rode bulls both, but that's not a very common combination, really. Bulldoggers are always pretty big guys, you know, and bull riders aren't always so much. But I'd say you made the good decision there, Don.
You know, I rodeoed for 37 years and went to several rodeos in 37 years, but I never as much as broke a finger bulldogging. And I hurt a knee playing basketball in high school, and I finally had to have that operated on. That's the only thing I ever had that hurt me, and it would hurt or ache when I'd bulldog.
Yeah.
So I quit.
Well, that's surprising, though. That bulldogging is a pretty rough sport, you know, and been a lot of people hurt and several people killed bulldogging, you know, over the years.
What was the size of those steers you guys were bulldogging when you first cracked out, Don?
Well, I went to Salinas, California one time, and Nathan Haley went with me, and he was talking about running them big steers, and I went around there and looked at them. Todd Watley wagered Harley May $100 that he could pick 10 out of that bunch. It would average 1,000 pound a piece, and did. I helped him weigh them out.
Wow.
Were they hard runners, or were they just old, sorry, worn out 1,000-pound bulldogs?
No, that was fresh cattle. They never had been throwed at Salinas.
Well, that long score, I bet that was a wild event. Don't you know, Cody?
How the heck did you even come out of that deal without an injury? That's the wildest. 1,000-pound
Well, I let the steer handle me for about 2 seconds, and then I got him.
What was a good time back then?
Out there?
Yes, sir.
A good time was anything under 10. And I think I was 6'6" on my last steer to win the average.
That's getting it out there.
Yeah.
What year would that have been, Don?
That was 1960.
1960. That's the first year you made the finals, is that right?
Yes.
You didn't go the first one, did you?
No, I went. I had some boys mounted at first, and I was when I even heard about there's going to be a finals. I was in New York City, Madison Square Garden, and at that time I was in the probably top 15.
Right.
I come home and stayed, and when they announced that who made the finals, I wasn't in it. So I was 16th at that time.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I make that one.
Yeah. Huh. I saw where you placed your first big win in the average was at Ada, Oklahoma in 1955. Talk about Ada, Oklahoma, the rodeo for people that don't know. That was a big rodeo back then, wasn't it, Don?
It was. People around here, they would wait all year to get to go to the rodeo that year, and they'd take a truck and haul a bunch of people over to Ada to see that rodeo. They'd go over there that afternoon, come back that night. And it's about 130 miles from here.
Yeah.
So it was a different situation then.
Yeah. But I'd never went, obviously, but I'd always heard a lot about the Ada Rodeo, and it was one of the biggest ones, if not the biggest one in Oklahoma.
You know, you said you had a bulldogging team. Uh-oh, we lost him.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's just some of them technical difficulties. Trying to link up down in Talihina, Oklahoma is a lot like trying to link up with the International Space Station, Jimbo.
It might be.
We didn't even know they had internet down there.
There we go. Got it. Sorry.
Right.
I got a call.
That's all right.
No problem. Don, you mentioned you had a team of horses. You mounted some guys at the first NFR in Dallas, Texas, 1959. How did you haul your team of horses around back then? How did you guys get around? Or did you haul a team? Did you just haul a bulldogging horse and hire
a car? The first year I went to rodeo and I bought a 59 Pontiac, a wide track, and that's what I pulled trailer with. I pulled inline trailer with two horses, and I pulled team of horses back to New York that year, and Cow Palace. I went. The longest trail I ever went to a rodeo was from New York City to San Francisco, California. And that was about 3,300 miles.
Wow.
And the highways, they didn't have the interstates like they have now, did they? Or did they?
No. We drove to nearly into Chicago before we ever hit a 4-lane highway. And then we took a 4-lane highway from there into New York.
Who was traveling with you then, Don? You remember?
Hi.
Who was traveling with you then?
Tater Decker and Jim Painter. And Ed George was going a little with him in it back then. But we wasn't, at that time, we wasn't really rodeoing full time. We would go to the good rodeos.
Right.
Jimbo, I used to clean Jim Painter's stalls in high school growing up.
Really?
Uh-huh. He told me a lot of good rodeo stories.
I heard a lot about him, never met him.
I can't repeat any of them on this
Right.
podcast.
Right.
Family friendly and all, but
right.
You know, Madison Square Garden. What was it like?
Madison Square Garden was like going to a year's worth of rodeos. You know, you went out there. We drove in there, and the 38th day we drove out coming home. It was 30-something days. They would have that rodeo like they would hit on Broadway. As long as it went good, they just add another performance to it.
Well, was it paid out on an average, or did you guys run it a day money every single day? How did they do that?
No, every time you'd make a go round, you know, when everybody run their first steer, they'd pay that go round out. And when I went back there, they had 8 go rounds, and you was bulldogging just every day or two. So,
how many guys would you mount out there?
Yeah. Well, I didn't have every. I think I had 4 guys riding out there, but Tater Decker was with me, and he was my hazer, and I let him haze most of them, and we just worked it out that way. We took one of his horses, one of mine, and my car and trailer.
Where'd you keep your horses when you got there?
Well, they have a big underground deal run under the old gardens, and they signed you stall for every horse you brought, and you'd go go down and take your horse down there. You wouldn't ever take him out, but just go to to the arena and exercise him or whatever you was doing, but it was, you rode him very little. Them horses got pretty anxious to run. But
How big arena was that, Don, back there? What would you compare it to?
Oh, it's compared to Oklahoma City Fairground Arena.
Yeah.
Maybe a little, but the setting was like 17,000. And I don't remember ever going out there that thing wasn't full of people to watch rodeo. But of course, you know, they didn't even see a horse back there. There's people come up there as we was unloading on the main street by the gardens. They'd come up there, and that was something to see for them to see us back a horse out of the trailer.
Yeah, I can imagine.
What'd you guys do on your downtime out there, New York City? All those cowboys. What all those cowboys do on their? What everybody do on their downtime out there in New York City, Don?
Well,
Model clothes.
I got a job of modeling H-bar-C cowboy suits, and that paid pretty good. You know, $50 an hour back then, that was good money. But anyway, everybody work anything. They just went to the rodeo and done whatever they wanted to do during the day, but they had rodeo afternoon and night, so you didn't have much time to do anything else.
Did you stay in that Belvedere? I didn't mean to.
I stayed to Belvedere.
Yeah, Belvedere. I've heard a lot of stories about that place.
Belvedere. Yeah, that's where everybody congregated and went over their run and talked about their do's and don'ts there.
Yeah. They probably had a big bar in there too, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they had a big place you could sit and drink, and
might have been a card game or two around there. I'm gonna guess.
Probably.
Just ever take it was a card game going.
What kind of cards did most of them play? Pitch?
Well, yeah, probably most of them pitch, but a lot of them just played regular cards like they do in Vegas.
Yep. You talked about those horses, Don, furnishing horses and stuff. What if somebody with a team, what percentage would they generally get of the winnings?
They'd get 25% for a Hazen horse and Bulldog horse.
Okay,
but most generally, I made more money with my horses than I did myself.
Right.
But it was good to have a team of horses in case you didn't win.
Then what did you have to pay the Hazer if you won?
You pay an eighth.
Eighth, okay.
And you paid eighth for Bulldogging horse.
Right.
That's a fourth for the total amount of money.
Yeah, those guys out there in Vegas with those big go-rounds, good team out there, make pretty good money.
Well, the horses that make out there more than the Bulldoggers would, and some of them would win over 100,000.
Right.
But it was a lot different when I rodeoed. If you made 10,000, you just knocked a home run.
Oh yeah.
But it's hard. You have to be at a real good rodeo to make 10,000. I made more money jackpots than I did at a rodeo at a time.
Really?
Yeah.
Speaking about jackpots, back in 1977, old C.R. Boucher, he put on a jackpot here in Pahuska, Oklahoma, and it was Texas versus Oklahoma, and you were on the Oklahoma team. Do you remember anything about that jackpot?
Yeah. Yeah, I was there. I was there. I broke a barrier on one of mine. It helped us get beat. So
That looked like a
I'll never,
pretty wild day.
yeah.
Was that the
It
only
was
one of
wild,
those?
but it was a good day. It was a good day. It was kind of a day, you know, where you'd go to a horse that you had in the race and you was real interested in, and they just run together till right up there at the finish line. That's the way we did in Texas. But then, you know, they had the good bulldoggers, more of them than we did to pick from. So
Was that the only one of those they did, or did they have a whole series of those Texas versus Oklahoma, Don?
that's the only one that I know of that they had up there. They had picked jackpots that they'd kind of divide them out and say, well, we're going to beat Oklahoma this time. But that's the only time I ever remember them beating us.
They said there was a
But
25-foot running head start that day. Something I read.
think it was about a 20 or 25 foot. It was a lengthy barrier.
What about bulldogging at places like Cheyenne, where you get some real speed going? Was it always the long barrier like it is now?
It's longer than it is now. Back when I went there, the shortest barrier I run against in Cheyenne was 30 foot. It's 20 now.
Yeah, I think they just recently changed it from 30 to 20.
I wonder why'd they do that, Don? Do you know why they shortened it?
I don't know. Cheyenne and Salinas and Tucson and a lot of them back when they started those rodeos, if they hadn't took that barrier out there, they had horses that wouldn't stand in the box and they'd run through the barrier. So they finally run by the cattle. So finally they put up a barrier and taxed the guy that was managing the horse, and they did them back then. They didn't know whether it's putting it against riders or bulldoggers or putting it against steers. They just knew that they had to get the cattle out in the arena where they could bulldog. So that was back in the Homer Pettigrew days, and of course he was tough as nails on them big rodeos like that.
He still holds the record for Cody for the most World's Championships, 6 for a bulldogger, and he won 4 of them in a row.
Pettigrew.
Yeah.
Were they out of New Mexico?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Who were some of the other top bulldoggers back in that day, Don, besides yourself?
Well, let me see. Back in my days,
yeah,
you know, back when I rodeoed, you didn't just go and rodeo and then count the money at the end of the deal. People that wanted to be a champion, they would go lease some airplane and go to them rodeos, and they wanted to be a champion. And I rodeoed for 37 years. I never thought about being a champion until I was getting ready to quit. Wasn't worth it. because
Right.
you either made money or you won a championship. If you won a championship, that you didn't have time to save money or manage money. You
Right.
just had to go.
Right.
Name.
Did you have
Cowboy.
did you have an airplane, Don?
Yeah, I rodeoed in an airplane the last 15 years. I guess I rodeoed.
You fly it
I had my
yourself?
own plane. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
you got any good airplane stories you can share with us?
I can tell you a bunch of them, but sometimes it wasn't good to hear.
We don't mind.
I started out in a 182 Cessna 182, and that's about 165-mile-an-hour airplane. And I went to I'd go and make over the 4th of July. I'd make 8 rodeos where I just only make 2 in a car. But I got somebody to take my horses and meet me at certain rodeos, the better rodeos, and then I made arrangements to some places I'd go and they'd have horses there that I sold them, and I kept a free seat on them, and I'd ride them. But when I went to flying an airplane wasn't long till I run for office, and that cut me out a lot.
Tell a story.
So,
You ever have any close calls or not put enough gas in that booger?
I went into Denver one year, and about 15 minutes before I got to the Denver airport, my plane went to struggling on that one tank, so I switched to the other, and I run about just a few minutes with it, and it went struggling. So I had to, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning. It was dark as 9 o'clock at night, and it was dark as pitch. And I had to find a place to set it down. So I just called Denver Airport, and they guided me to a airport just east of theirs, and it's a little place. And I had 2 passengers with me, and I landed there. And the passengers I got in there, and I noticed they was white as a sheet, and their eyes was big. I said, "What's the matter?" "Well, what do you think about somebody being in an airplane, or you being in there and somebody running out of gas?" I said, "Well, I know that they had set it down, but I've had that, and one time I got in a storm is about Woodward coming back from Denver, and I had to set it down in a pasture. It's just so rough I couldn't handle it. And I've had about as many approaches to accidents as any pilot has flew 15,000 hours, and that's how many hours I've got.
Quite a few. That's quite a few, isn't it, Jimbo?
Would be for me. One would be enough for me.
Holy moly.
I was in what's the name of that rodeo in 4th of July in Wyoming? Right
Cody?
north.
Cody, Wyoming? Yes, sir.
Yeah. I went to Cody, and I got in there that night, and I was up the next morning, and no, I was up that night after the rodeo, and a bulldog, and I went and got me a room to stay all night. And I was going to I was going to stay there, and then I was going to Belfoos and some of them rodeos over there, and somebody went to rapping on the door, and I got up, and it was Tough. What's Tough Cooper's dad name?
Roy.
Roy. It was Roy, and he said,
No, not that.
It's Roy Cooper.
Yes, sir.
And he wanted to know which direction I was going. I said, well, I'm going to Bell Foods. So you need a ride? He said, we're up at in North Dakota. I forget the name of the town. Anyway, I said, when you got to be up this afternoon? And that was 7 o'clock in the morning. And I said, well, you got to fly out there. You can't drive that far. And he said, well, that's what I come to see you. I just wondered if you'd take us up there. And it was him and Barry Burke and another guy. So I loaded them up, and I flew that direction. And so I finally got a hold of the FAA, and I asked them what the nearest airport was to that town, and they said, well, there's not one less than 30 miles. And I said, well, I've got some people here that's up this afternoon in the rodeo, and I'm flying them to it. I said, what's the closest place I can land? And they told me it's 30 miles. So I said, well, I want to make a deal with you. And they said, what's that? I said, I want you to call ahead of me and get a hold of the sheriff's department and have them to block off the road that goes by that arena as close as you can get. And I said, I'll just land there. I'll just let them out there. And he called back and he said, I've got you fixed up. So I come in, I just come straight in, and I know them people thought I was crashing or something. There's a whole stand full of people. And I come in and landed and taxied up to the ticket office. They got out, and I turned around and took off. And I had a lot of people that was already there that rodeoed was asking me how come me to have to land there. And I told them, well, I had Cooper and Barry Burke and someone else with me. I had 3 people with me. But that was kind of unusual. I never did. I made a deal with the law enforcement people so I wouldn't have that the problem with. So,
They probably thought you was part of the rodeo entertainment.
I've had a few.
It sounds like that J.W. Cooper.
Right, right.
Don, did you ever bulldog over there at Pendleton?
Yep.
Yes, sir. I bulldogged 1 year there, and I didn't have to go back because I didn't like it.
What was it like? What was it like?
It's on grass. It's on grass, and it started raining at daylight the morning I was up, and I was up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and on my steer.
Uh-huh.
And it was just like getting behind the boat and skiing, going across that arena, just on that wet grass, just slick as glass. So I can explain the rest of it. And I was 9 something on that steer. Well, I didn't even come close to placing. And when I come up on my next steer, I missed him out there in front.
On
So
purpose?
No, I tried to.
That's hard ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That ground hard.
Yeah.
So you can get a high rate of speed going
Yeah.
right there. In
I
that.
mean, I think
What
maybe he
happened?
just didn't get off. I knew he didn't go hit the ground on purpose. Yeah.
It's a long old ways back over there to Pendleton too.
Oh man.
Long ways from
Yeah.
here. I wonder why there's
Yeah.
so many good bulldoggers from your part of Oklahoma. Is there something in the water down there, Don?
How many good bulldoggers?
I said, I wonder why there's so many good bulldoggers from your part of the world. From
Well,
Shakota all the way through Talihina.
yeah, back when me and a lot of us was bulldog, Todd Watley, he was kind of the front runner for Eastern Oklahoma. He won a championship, one year, and he hauled a team of horses. He made good money rodeoing, and all of us tried to make it that way, make money a rodeoing, didn't have to work for somebody else. So I think that was kind of, and back then everybody looked at, there wasn't that many buildings around, but everybody would look at how we had to practice, and that's where they'd come to practice. I built an arena here purposely for guys that didn't have an arena to come here to practice, and I built it in 1970. So you can imagine how many people I'd have 20 or 30 people nearly every weekend here practicing, and we'd run them until 12 o'clock at night.
Huddleston name. There's a few bulldoggers with that name. How was Ricky Huddleston related to you, Don?
He was my nephew. He was my twin brother's boy. So he learned how to bulldog right down here in my arena.
Well, that guy could bulldog good,
Right.
real good.
Yeah, yeah.
You had some rodeo schools or some bulldogging schools, haven't you, Don, over the years?
Yeah, yeah. I've had several here.
Yeah.
I had one and had it down to Talihina Roundup Club Arena, but it wasn't a good place to have a school because if it rained, that arena down there stayed muddy for a week. And my arena out here, it can come a 2-inch rain one day and you can bulldog the next day.
Yeah. How'd you train them to bulldog? What's the process? Used to show them boys.
Yeah, I would start out with them, showing them how to get a hold of a steer when they got to him. The main thing was getting them to catch cattle right. So I'd have them to back in there and I'd hold a steer, have 2 or 3 guys hold a steer and lead a horse by and show them in slow motion how to catch a steer to get their feet in the ground where you could handle them. And then I would get, after I got them catching cattle, then I'd let them run them. I'd pick out the slow cattle that they could catch easy without them setting up or anything, and start them out that way. I've started a lot of bulldoggers right down here, and that's another reason. Me and Todd Watley and Roy finally got his arena going up there, and he trained a lot of them up there.
You talking about Roy Duval?
Yeah.
Well, that's another name right there,
Oh, yeah.
Jimbo. Oh, only the Duvals. Shakota and Talihina, they're right there head to head though with bulldoggers. There's a lot of good bulldoggers come from both little towns right there
Right.
in Eastern
But just
Oklahoma.
like up in this country, so many steer ropers. It's funny how certain areas, it's a concentration of one event or the other.
Oh yeah.
And why it works that way. You mentioned James Bynum there earlier, Don. He was when I was a little kid. That was the guy that I wanted to watch if he was on TV or whatever.
Who's that?
James Bynum.
Oh, James Bynum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he threw a lot of fast cattle, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was one of the toughest guys during my time.
Yeah.
The toughest person during my time was uh old Harry Charters.
Air charters.
So he was he'd weigh about 300 pounds and was 6 foot and 7 inches tall, and he'd just pick up them big cattle and just slam them against the ground, and you just couldn't hardly beat him. But of course, he couldn't make very many of them. That was the only thing. The rest of the rodeos that was divided up among us people that was just normal size.
Right. He roped calves pretty good too, didn't he?
Rope calves really good.
He won the all around, Cody, I think, one year.
No kidding.
They're in the 60s. Big hair. He didn't last too long, did he, Don? I mean, he didn't rodeo too long, did he?
No, he is too old when he started,
I see.
but he just wanted to win him a championship. I heard after that,
Yeah,
and
he did.
he just rodeoed normal and won a championship. But everybody could throw them big cattle like that, like he could.
Right, right. Were you ever
And
around? Go ahead.
he
I'm
went
sorry.
to the first national finals at Dallas, and he won a bunch of money that year, 1959.
Huh. Were you ever around Alan Keller much? Did your careers overlap a little bit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was rodeo. I went out to Salt Lake City and was rodeoing out there, and he come to me and wanted to. He rode my horse there, and he asked me if he could travel a little while with me. And I said, well, let me see how many I've got. If I've got room, I will. So his dad was with him, and his dad come to me and he said, if you'll take him, I'll if he owes you anything, I'll pay it. I said, all right. I said, if he'll bulldog like I want him to, he said, he don't owe me nothing. So I took him and hauled him all that year, and he won quite a bit. And after that, he thought he ought to get him a set of horses and do what I was doing. Well, his horses didn't last long. He didn't know how to manage them, and so he hauled them. He hauled them a little while, and then he just finally sold them.
Yeah. What about Jack Roddy? He was another one that was real well known back then. Supposed to have been a heck of a bull rider or bulldogger from California.
He was tough. He and I were about the same size. We'd meet a lot of places that was, just be which one of us drawed the best steer was one that's going to win.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to see the great horse Baby Doll?
Yeah, rode him. I rode her. I rode her once or twice. I never got on her that I didn't win something. She was a good bulldogging horse.
Possibly
When I first started, I rode Todd Watley's little horse Brownie. He was a good horse. And then Baby Doll come along and kind of, when he wore out, and took his runs, and then went from there to when Baby Doll went out, why Jimmy Smith bought a horse we call Old Colt, and he is having trouble with him. So I took him one year. I think it was 65, first year of Oklahoma City finals, and I took him in the fall before that, and worked him, and I rode him at the finals that year and mounted a lot of people. So after I made my deal to haul him after till Houston was over. So we got a lot of people riding him, and I just turned him over to him then. And
hey Don, you made the NFR when it was in Los Angeles. What was it like when the NFR was out there in California?
Well, them people down there was really unfriendly. So you couldn't, contestants, when they went there and lived in their hotels, eat in their restaurants, visited with them during the day, they could tell what kind of people was there. And I certainly didn't like it. So there wasn't nobody liked it. Didn't make any money because they wouldn't. They never did. I don't think they ever filled the building up. So they just changed it to Oklahoma City, and really that Oklahoma City didn't fill up for at least I was here about 3 years, and then it went to filling up. That was at the Fairgrounds Arena. So they finally moved it over to the bigger Coliseum and stayed there till Las Vegas come and got them.
Wonder why New York would just fill up with city people, Don, and a place like Los Angeles wouldn't.
Well, I think that, when they started the finals, because a lot of us that was just rodeoing was scared to death of the finals because we didn't know what they was going to do with it. And so I got to talk to some of the directors. Todd Watley was one that sold me on it. He said, what we're trying to do is have finals at these bigger towns to get big rodeos started. He said, if we have a rodeo at Los Angeles or Dallas or wherever, then we can establish another rodeo and we can just move that on to someplace else. That's what their idea was, but it got to where it didn't make any money, so they just went with Oklahoma City till it got to making money, and then lost this other towns wanted it.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy. I went out there this year to Las Vegas, and you wouldn't believe how big that deal is, Jimbo.
Well, I can imagine. I've been out there a few times, not during the rodeo, but didn't go to the rodeo, but I was there during the rodeo, and it was all cowboy hats and diesel trucks, and they took that town without firing a shot.
Don, you always hear when a bunch of bulldoggers get together, fight always breaks out. Did you ever see any of those famous bulldogger fights back in the day?
No.
Okay.
I've had a few myself, but I never got to see them. But they wasn't much to them.
What about when that one out in where Slim Pickens got in a fight out there at the Cow Palace? Were you there at that one?
No, I wasn't.
That was before his time, I think.
I tell you what, there's some good pictures from it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know much about it, but I sure enjoy seeing those pictures.
Yeah.
Well, Todd Watley, he won the world championship the same year as Ben Johnson. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
53, Jimbo.
Yeah.
In bull riding, though, I think.
Oh heck.
Yeah.
I just
he won the world in bull riding and the world in bulldogging.
Yeah.
Get nothing out of you, can we?
Well, but
you ever see anybody bulldog a buffalo or anything like that, Don?
Well, I've seen a video of it. It was Dick Trutt bulldogging one out at Cheyenne, and the bulldogging a buffalo is a little bit beyond my deal, because because they know Harry Charters couldn't throw one of them down.
Did you get to know Dick Truitt very well, Don?
I know him pretty well. He lived down here
Right.
about 45, 50 miles from here. And I got to visit with him quite a bit.
He was quite a old cowboy, wasn't he? Quite a
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
He was
He was
Everett Shaw's brother-in-law.
Oh, okay.
Dick was. I've heard a lot of Dick Truitt stories. He was sure enough one of the old time cowboys.
Yeah.
Bulldog and a
He
buffalo.
was one. He's the one that you could hook up to.
Yeah.
He wouldn't tell a lie if you had his arm twisted up over his head.
Yeah. Huh. What a guy. Don, do you keep up with the rodeo nowadays? You watch it on the Cowboy Channel or anything much?
Yeah, I watch it all the time on the Cowboy Channel. You know, I don't know any of those guys that
Right.
rodeos are anymore. I hadn't been rodeoing since '87.
Right.
And so I don't you know, I don't know a lot of the guys. I just know of them, the ones that come here, and
Watched him grow up.
we watch bull riding and the bulldogging and about everything that they show this that's on the Cowboy Channel.
Yeah.
I watch it all the time.
I've noticed those
Yeah.
bulldogging cattle. They just don't hardly have any horns anymore, do they?
Well, they switch. They don't buy those cattle, those bulldog cattle in Mexico anymore. They have to raise them over here, and they don't raise. They grow them cattle out ahead of the horns.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not old enough to have the horns, are they? How
You
much
take
harder? Go ahead.
you take those cattle you get out of old Mexico. By the time they get big enough to drive to the line to load up in the truck, they have to be 3 or 4 years old.
Right. Right. How much harder would it be to bulldog those little shorthorn cattle? It looks like they have a lot of trouble with them.
Well, the horns amounts to a lot, and them cattle is they're fat and more flouncier than them Colerainians were. You take one of them little steers that's got short horns, they can slip a horn by you before you know it, if you're not really aware of it.
Yeah. I've been watching that at Denver, and boy, they're just a little look like 6 inches long, and they slip a lot of horns. Those good bulldoggers.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot.
Oh, yeah. Well, it all has, all the time.
I even bulldog for a while, Jimbo.
Really?
My bulldog quit biting. I turned into just Chihuahua, and after that,
right.
quit. Give up the bulldogging sport. Hey, what's the longest back in your day? I think them old stock contractors, they bulldog them steers for quite some time. What's the longest you ever saw a stock contractor haul a set of steers around?
Well, I won the bulldogging at Baton at New Boston, Texas, and that's during the Los Angeles during the rodeo there. But I won the bulldogging with a steer that had been there 4 years, been there 4 times. My last steer was that steer.
He knew that arena better than you, didn't
he? Yeah. Yeah. And they just kept them as long as the bulldoggers had come and bulldog them. But we finally got contractors and people that will buy steers and shape them up and lease them out to them, and it got a lot better.
Who's your favorite bulldogger going right now, Don? Since you've been keeping up with them pretty good.
Well, I think the best guy that does it right is Tyler Wagon Pack.
Yeah, he's good.
He does everything right. You know, them other guys, they just hit the ground and jerk them over their hip and lay down and hope they fall with them. But Wagon Pack, he stand up and bulldog them, shape them up and bulldog them.
He's good
Pack.
to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy's exciting, Jimbo.
Don, if you were putting together a Mount Rushmore of bulldoggers, you'd need 4 names. And who would you put on that Mount Rushmore of bulldoggers? And they don't have to be guys you rodeoed with, or they don't even have to be world champions. Just who do you think belongs on the Mount Rushmore of bulldoggers?
I think Todd Watley, James Bynum, Harley May, Harry Charters. That would be the 4 I'd put on.
Pretty good list.
What about Roy Duval?
Roy is a good one. It's just wasn't in their time area. But Roy is a tough bulldog.
Yeah. It's hard to just narrow it down to 4. You know, it's just so many good ones.
Oatberry, I put Oatberry on there if you want.
Yeah. And Homer Pettigrew. I mean, you know, it's hard to leave some of those guys off, but you got to if you're just picking 4 names.
I don't know how they could even do it. He was pretty confident on his 4 names, though.
I know it.
And they're great 4 names. There's not much to argue with.
That's great. No, I'm not going to argue with him. He was there and he saw him.
Yeah.
I got one for you.
Well, you move those people that y'all are thinking about back when the guys was bulldogging when I mentioned them. They couldn't even walk in an arena with them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, Homer Pettigrew wasn't a very big guy, Don. What made him so tough? I don't know if you ever saw him, but I'm sure you heard a lot about him.
I bulldogged against him.
Okay.
But he was tough, and I'll tell you the reason he was tough. He was from a poor family, and he had to win to go.
Yeah.
And he just buried down that much harder, and he is a lasting one. He wouldn't just try him and turn him loose. He'd throw him down.
Yeah. My grandfather hazed for him a lot, and he said he could shape up cattle better than anybody he ever hazed for.
Better than anybody I ever seen. And you know, you gotta bring him forward. He was champion back then. He was champion 6 times, I think.
Right.
And
yeah,
so he was a tough bulldog.
You know, I always said I'd like to go back to, if you could go back in time to a rodeo, I'd love to go back to New York and watch Homer Pettigrew bulldog and Toots Mansfield rope calves and Casey Tibbs ride a bronc.
Jim Shoulders ride a bull.
Yeah. And Gene Autry sing. Now, wouldn't that be something to go back and watch one of those rodeos?
I'd love to, Jimbo.
Well, I'll tell you what, them guys that you mentioned, they would be in the spotlight.
Right. Yes, they would. Yeah.
Every time they'd go back there.
Yeah, they sure would.
You can't have that Mount Rushmore of bulldoggers without bulldogging horses, and some of them horses are way more famous than most of the guys that rode them. What would be your Mount Rushmore of bulldogging horses? 4 horses. I guess it could be
I'd say Todd Watley. I'd say if Todd Watley's Brownie, Willard Combs is Baby Doll, Jim Smith's Colt. He called Colt, and Harley May had a horse. I don't remember his name, but they'd be the 4 I'd put there.
What was that one that Jimmy Powers had for so long? Yellow Dog. That was a
Yellow Dog. He was a good one for certain things, but he wasn't like that. Them was they go like to Cheyenne or Tucson or some of them places that they had a, you know, just like running up on them out in the pasture and catch them. And a lot of them bulldogging horses, you can't do that on. they'd run over them or wouldn't get close enough for you to catch one. Of course, they wasn't trained that way. The ones you're talking about is horses that just sit in that box and break and catch them out there about 30 foot out in front of the box.
It was a different game back then. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
And, you couldn't just like asking me a question about the toughest bulldoggers. It's hard to say about a tough set of bulldoggers because the bulldogging changed up so much. It's quick every year. And just like me, I just lasted so many years being tough, and then I got to being weaker where the rest of them come along. And that's the way the rest of them, they was here for so many years and then they was gone.
His granddaughter had a bulldogging team for a while. I don't know if she still does or not. Following it, she was the hazer, getting that 25%.
Wow.
Ain't that something?
Lacey, she hauled a team there for a year or two, and she's a good hazer. She learned to haze right down here, and of course she had good instructions because every time she missed hazing one, she got straightened out on. And she really tried to be a certain place, the right place at a certain time.
When is your bulldogging jackpot, Don, going to be this year? When is y'all's bulldogging jackpot going to be this year?
It's Memorial Weekend. It's the Saturday.
May 26th and 27th. May 26th.
It's in May.
Last weekend
of May.
Well, if everyone wants to get down there and check it out, that's going to be a good one.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be a good one. 50 years.
50 years. Can you imagine that? Doing anything for 50 years? I mean, that takes a lot of staying power.
I ain't even lived 50 years yet, Jimbo. I'll be lucky to, probably. Well, Don.
Well, I've lived that and passed it a little ways.
Yes, sir. What are you guys doing down there now in Southeast Oklahoma?
Well, we're training some steer horses and breaking some horses, and it's pretty slow right now.
Sounds like Gayla's keeping you in line there.
Totally.
Well, we sure appreciate you coming on today, taking time out of your day to talk to us about some of these old rodeos and old rodeo stories.
Yeah, just anytime you need one, well, holler at me. Tell me what about, and I'll tell you one about it.
You got it. Just give us a call, and we'll talk to you any day of the week. This has been a good episode. We haven't done too many bulldoggers, if any.
No, well, Alan Keller is the only other one, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Don, one of the truly great ones, all through the 60s, just one of the very top bulldoggers. And we were just really tickled to get to talk to him and talk about the old bulldogging.
Not too many guys we can talk to can tell us about Dallas, Los Angeles, Oklahoma City, and then stay current on everything else.
Yeah, still watches and the young guys,
And New York.
Yes, sir.
See,
especially New York.
I was at the last rodeo that they had at New York in the old building. And then, of course, when the last time I was there, they announced that they're shutting that rodeo down, and they built another building out there, and they went to having some amateur rodeos out there. But I've never been back.
What year was that they had the last rodeo, Don?
1959. 1959. I remember every day of them 38 that I was there. I hated it worse than anything. But it was a good rodeo to go to make money.
The only time I miss roping now, Jimbo, is when Cheyenne rolls around.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I think about it during the Ben Johnson.
Oh, yeah, that's a gimme. That's a gimme.
Yeah, you have to like Cheyenne and Salinas, Tucson. Those rodeos had been going so long, and they just kind of had to happen, you know.
We love them, that's for sure.
Yep.
Low
Well-
battery.
Well, Don, we'll be seeing you soon. If I get down
Okay.
that way, we'll come see you.
If you get up this way,
Do
come
that.
see us.
Okay.
Hey,
All
thanks.
right.
Thank you.
We got the technical difficulties fixed again.
Yeah.
Gosh dang, we got to get Gayla hired to come to work for us up here.
Yeah.
She's overcame a lot of obstacles. There
Right.
today. All right, everybody. Till next week. This has been old Cody and Jimbo. See y'all later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.